Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Paul from Restore Life Ministries. This is the first episode, episode 1. It's our introduction to the Identity series. We just got finished with the Hearing God series, and if you haven't listened to that, you might want to go and check out our channel and listen through the Hearing God series. I think it's very helpful. I hope that you would find it helpful. So, let's get started on this series. It's going to be very similar to the Hearing God series in terms of format. We will have like these 5 to 10 minute videos. And I do that because everybody's lives are very busy, and I hope it can fit into kind of your lifestyle. We also do homework at the end of the series. Obviously, all of this is voluntary, but I think you'll get a lot more out of it if you do the homework. All right, in 2008, a British woman awoke in a place which she didn't know about. She didn't know what the place was. She didn't remember it. And she found herself around some teenagers. And so she started hanging out with these teenagers. And it took the teenagers about half a day to work up the courage to ask her, why are you hanging out with us? And she was like, what do you mean? Naomi was her name. What do you mean? Why am I hanging out with you? They said, well, you're not a teenager. And she's like, well, yes, I am. They're like, no, you're not. So they brought her a mirror and showed her face to herself. And to her shock, she realized actually she wasn't a teenager. She was actually married with a family, and she had had an episode where she didn't remember who she was. The good news of the story is she went back to her family, and after a couple of months, she regained all of her memory. A lot of us are kind of like Naomi, where we don't realize who we are. And so we're acting out kind of out of that identity. We're acting out kind of our life. And this series, we're going to really focus in on identity. And it can be, I think sometimes people think it's kind of like a benign, negligible kind of topic, identity, who we think we are, who we believe we are, and who we believe God is. I can tell you, after doing many years in ministry, working with people, this topic is centrally important to us. And so you may be wondering, why should I even care about identity? Let me give you a few reasons why you should care about identity. Lies about identity really can create strongholds in our life that really entangle us and keep us from living the kind of life that we were meant to live. Lies around identity really can lead us into kind of shame and hopelessness when we don't know who we are and who God is. And lies about our identity can really lead to bondage, because if we don't know who we are, we're really going to go down some roads that try to fill in those spots. And we intrinsically may feel it, but we may not know exactly what it is we're feeling. So identity is really important. Lies. The enemy, his currency is really around lies. And specifically, lies around identity are very strategic for the enemy. So this is an area that the enemy is really going to come at you with. It's around your identity and around God's identity. We see this in Genesis 3, which we'll talk about later. So that's the enemy's currency. On the flip side of this, if you step into identity more, if you're pressing into true identity, it leads to a tremendous amount of freedom for you and also for those around you, because you impact and influence those around you, right? It can also really lead into a real discovery around destiny, because each of us have been created by God to do certain things on this planet. And so as you push into identity, it really can bring some amazing breakthroughs in terms of your destiny. So hopefully that encourages you to move forward. So let's talk about a little bit about kind of what we're going to be doing here. What is this journey into identity about? Well, first and foremost, we're going to talk about kind of this big picture. And when I say big picture, I mean really big picture. I'm going to give you kind of this meta-narrative view. And the reason I'm doing that is because it gives the context around identity. And I think when we're looking at these things, context is super important. We're going to be diving pretty deep into who God says you are, which is super important, and also who He says He is. We're also going to explore kind of the lenses that we filter life through, and we're going to find that some of those lenses may not be very helpful for us. And so we're going to talk about how do we change those lenses to filter, to interpret what's happening to us in a way that's more helpful. So, in the previous episodes, previous series, I talked about journaling a lot, and just talked about how it's so helpful. And I would just encourage you again in this series to journal because it helps us to see things that are happening that we might not see if we're not doing that. So totally encourage you to do that. And as I said before, with each of these episodes, we'll do a little bit of homework before we move on to the next one. And I think that really helps to solidify what we're doing, activate some things, and really deepen the roots of what we're working on here. So the homework this time is I want you to think about an area of your life where you're having trouble or difficulty or pain. And I want you to ask God to bring clarity to that area. And I want you to journal like what he's saying to you. My guess is that what we talk about in this series, there's probably some threads that are going to run through that discussion with God, but we'll see. So that's the homework for this time. Next time, we're going to talk about the story we find ourselves in. Hope to see you then.